Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to the February 13th Planning Board Workshop. Noreen, if we can start with a attendance roll call, please.
Sure. Anthony Vaccaro.
Here.
Lisa McQuaid. Here. Bonnie Franson is absent. Jason Swinsky.
Present.
Jeff Manson.
Here.
And John Allegro is out.
Okay, before we get started, I would like to point out the fire exits. The main fire exit is the door we all entered in at the back corner of the room. There is another fire exit down the hallway, down the stairs that will take you outside on the lower level. And in the room behind us, there is a door out also to the parking lot. Everyone, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, so we're starting out with new business tonight. We have a new project, I hope I'm pronouncing this right, Coupeau and Maffei.
They're not here.
Okay, well, moving right along then. On to continuing business. We can always loop back around. Representatives for Monroe Commons, please. Good evening, gentlemen. If you can, just remind us who each of you are and what you represent for the record.
Into the microphones, please.
Caleb Pavelski from Peters Eckenthal Engineering.
I'm Barry Taylor, I'm the architect, Barry Taylor Architects.
Joel Mann, owner's representative.
Thank you very much.
Excuse me 1 second. Barry, can you spell your last name?
Sure, T-E-R-A-C-H.
Thank you. Caleb, I have.
So if one of you would please start by giving us an update on where we're at this time.
Basically, at the last planning board meeting, we had a couple brief comments from the planning board engineer and from the members. We did some revisions to the map. I will go through that revisions momentarily. There was actually three items that we want to try to get resolved tonight or moving forward on that. Is basically the number one is to start Secret Ed, the lead agency. One of the requests from the planning board was to submit a list of our consultants, and that's what we did. And then we have two items to discuss. That's regarding the parking calculation and the lot coverage. So our attorney has submitted a letter to the planning board with a discussion regarding that two items. And that's basically what we're waiting to get resolved so we can finalize the layout to move forward and get it more at a final version.
So actually, why don't we start there? If you don't mind, can we start with Ashley? So I know that we're in communication with Ben regarding the submission that we had received.
Yes.
For parking calculations and lot coverage.
Yes, so I did receive the letter from Mr. Morrow, the project's attorney, and I spoke with him this morning as well about that. So the first issue dealing with the lot coverage, it really depends on the type of pavers that are proposed. So the letter indicates you're proposing some type of permeable paver, but without the specific details, knowing what that is, it's unclear whether that'll count, because on the prior applications, different applications, it has been counted towards lot coverage, so it really depends on what specifically is being proposed. So we'll need some more details on that. And as far as the second issue, the parking calculation, I wasn't aware that Ben previously made a determination about how parking is calculated for those types of uses, so I did reach out to him and just need to talk with him about that and figure out the specifics. So we are moving those along, but unfortunately, don't have an answer for you tonight. As far as the seeker, the other thing that we needed was a list of all of the approvals. It was unclear, I think, the public water supply was maybe the main one that we were unclear of whether or not you were gonna need a public water supply approval. That would make Orange County Department of Health a involved agency, so we really need a list of all of the involved agencies in order to go ahead and start the seeker process.
Is there any guidelines on the permeable paving that, so we can choose based on that, what type we should use? It should be counted to lot coverage or not, or it's,
I really don't know what would, what would work, that wouldn't be counted based on the definition.
That's a question that we would have to, that's a question we would have to ask Ben, that he would be able to
I think
answer.
it really is you have to come up with something, propose something, and then it has to be evaluated whether that fits into the definition of lot coverage or not. Because it's not just pavement, it's also dealing with compacted surfaces, so there's a few elements involved.
Just so it's not a moving target, right? Propose something so that it's not a moving target.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
need to have this exactly squared away before, because that's a big part of your project, and you're proposing to use that, and it's gonna affect your lot coverage, and whether you need a variance, it's an issue that definitely needs to be resolved sooner rather than later.
Okay. I would just say that one of the types that we had used in the past, we had used permeable pavers on Bella Vista, and it's a project, it was a apartment complexes up in the city of Middletown, and I know from personal experience going out there that when it rains, like it was built a few years ago, and it still just sucks the water right out of the ground.
Understood. On a recent application, it's been determined that, or my understanding of the determination was that it would count towards lot coverage.
It would?
It would.
Okay.
The permeable pavers.
because it's compacted.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, the way the definition, it's not just impervious surfaces, it's also compacted surfaces.
Okay, we'll look into that and we'll come up with something. So the question is, besides the well and the list of involved agencies, besides the health department for the well, is there any other questions on the list? Because I think, if I remember correctly, I think it was Tom Cusick. We have already Tom Cusick on board, but I don't have Mark Seamers there. But I think it was already a discussion about it, and since we have the hotel there, we might need health department approval, so the question is, I
And
think,
the restaurant, right?
we didn't propose the restaurant there.
Okay. Maybe I misheard.
Part of the hotel use.
Part of the tele use.
Right, yeah.
I mean,
Yeah,
it's
so
really
that
dependent
would-
on, your app, whatever your, I don't know what approvals you need, so whatever list it's up to you, give us that list, and then we could,
So the question is if we can submit this list, and at the next meeting, at the regular planning board meeting, the town can act on that. The planning
that's
board can
as
act
far
on that.
as, up to, how the board wants to proceed, they'd be able to declare lead agency at that time, and then circulate the
Basically.
list.
One of the questions I remember was whether or not the sewer main extension was required.
There is a sewer main extension required. Basically, the sewer is, the next project, the Old Moishy Gardens, the residential project, just got sewer main approval from Orange County Health Department and the DEC.
Okay,
So based on that, we will propose to get a connection to their main.
okay. I remember that as an open issue, I just
Yeah.
wasn't sure what the status was.
Yeah, probably the only, we studied option going on the other side, to the Woodbury side, but there's no mains in that area, so we
Right.
will connect on the residential side.
Any other commentary from our consultants before I go to the board?
There were no plans submitted, so.
Okay, and board members, any questions that you have thus far that you'd like to get answered, or comments you'd like to make in relation to, really, we're kind of focused on the issue right now of solving lot coverage and solving parking calculation.
My only comment is, and I've stated this before in other applications, if we're going to review permeable surfaces, I would like to see some case study or historical records, because my understanding is that there's a useful life for paver stones.
Okay.
And if they're great the first 5 or 10 years, but after that, they clog up and
Right.
don't work,
Especially with the salt and sand that's put down.
then there would have to be a commitment towards replacement.
Would that be a restriction we could place in the approval when it gets down there?
If it got to that point and they were able to, they had some kind of paver that fit
Yeah, I'm
under
saying
the
like-
definition, then
Yeah.
some type of condition to,
For maintenance.
require, exactly.
Is there something offhand that you had in mind that might fit the definition of both permeable and not compacted? Or that's something that's gonna require some research?
There is some grass pavers, like you have some mats on the grass
Mhm.
that you can park in that, and the benefit of that is it looks green, and there is green, and you can still park in it, and you still maintain so there is no issue with the drainage, it's not an issue, and it fits everything, but we'll need to make a little bit more research for the best option on that. There are probably multiple companies in that times doing that, and we'll do the research and we'll come back to the board.
Right, I mean, obviously, we're gonna need Ben's guidance on that as
Correct.
far as, what's acceptable as far as our code, but I was just curious if there was anything that you had in mind. I was rereading through the letter this afternoon, with parking calculations and the lot coverage, and so just checking some things in relation to code. So I just noticed a couple of things. I didn't notice, details about these things in the plans. So I just kind of wanted to bring them up at this point, since we're talking so much about parking and what's devoted to that. One of the things is, so regulation 5750, for a business facility, depending on the size of the area of the square footage, it requires a dedicated truck offloading space. I didn't notice that on the plan, so I don't know if I was just missing a detail. I noticed that there's bus and taxi drop-off up front, so obviously that would want to be dedicated towards, passengers.
On the right-hand side of the plan,
Mhm.
we do have laid out a truck loading area.
Terrific. Then, so in regulation 5751 T, so parking lots of 30+ spaces require at least 5% interior space be devoted to landscaped area, I'm paraphrasing a little bit, and at planning board discretion, could require 1 tree per every 8 spaces, which of course something we'd have to talk about. Any area that area is in addition to any landscaped area that might be required around the property line. So as I was looking at the plans, the way the dividers were between the various rows of parking, I wasn't clear, are those pure concrete, are those landscaped areas? Had you given any thought about that?
That will be landscape areas.
Okay,
Yes.
terrific. Yeah, those were just 2 questions. I wasn't sure from my reading the plans where you were going with that.
I have one other question. What we, in order to move forward, will be very important for us. As moving forward, we are required to do a traffic study, and we want to start doing the traffic counts. So the question to the board is, what intersections will be required to study for this project? We know where we are. We're in the middle of Nininger Road. We'll probably need the end of County Route 105 and Nininger. We'll need Dundenberg. And I'm actually involved in the other project. We did a lot of traffic studies, and a lot of improvements are proposed actually on this road. What the best time is to coordinate it while they are doing it. So we would like to move ahead forward with that, but we don't have a scope. So the question is how fast we can get a scope from the planning board with regards to the traffic.
Well, and I guess that was the first thing that I thought of is there's going to be a whole level of traffic added onto that road that doesn't exist at this point. So how do you factor that into the traffic study are you basically working from one traffic study to the next?
So basically, we want to do a new count on the roads, but the question will be which intersection. Once we have the count, we are adding up all proposed projects within the reasonable timing and this project, how much this is affecting and other projects, and this being coordinated, and then you have recommendations for improvement. That's the way basically it works. But the starting point is to get the counts for the intersections what the board feels will be affected with this project.
So at this point, we haven't started the secret process yet and haven't developed the secret scope for, you know, if there's a positive determination, any kind of traffic study that's gonna be required. The board doesn't yet have a traffic consultant, and I believe they will wanna hire a traffic consultant as well. So I think at this point, it's really too soon to say. Of course, if you're already doing a traffic study, you could do what you think might, you know, apply, but until there's actually a scope, we can't say what is gonna be needed.
I understand. So that was actually the point we submitted a list of consultants, so you can move ahead. The question is, at what point will the board move on with that, getting the consultants on board?
I thought that maybe it was gonna be discussed tonight, some possible consultant. I could be wrong though.
I think that's what Bonnie had.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, I do think Bonnie was planning on doing that.
Coming up with a list in the event that it is positive? Is that?
Yeah, potential consultants that the planning board's gonna wanna to hire to help with it. I mean, you could still discuss, you know, if anyone has anyone in mind, if Sean has any, you know, recommendations, I could give some as well, if you wanna, they're gonna be back on Tuesday, I guess, so we could always have it then.
I was wondering if that would be appropriate, if we could delay that conversation till Bonnie's return. I'd really like her involved in that conversation. If we can move it to Tuesday so that we can get this done, you know, in a reasonable time. You know, I don't wanna see us put this off a month. Unless there's a legal reason we have to.
And you'll have the involved agencies list, can you get that
We'll
by
try
tomorrow?
to get it
or-
tomorrow,
Okay.
yes.
Right, yeah, so we will delay that conversation till Bonnie's return and can chair that conversation. She's truly the best one suited on our board to lead that at this point. So, I appreciate your understanding that we're gonna make that decision. As long as the board feels that that's also appropriate. Any objection to that on the board? No. Okay, so we'll revisit this at our Tuesday meeting and then get that information out so that we can do that. I mean, certainly I think, right, although we haven't, you know, started secret, although we haven't started scoping, part of the issue you're gonna have is the redesign of exit 131 is gonna play a different factor than when this project was, just looking at the timeline on the plans, that wasn't even it was a wish at that point, not a thought, and it certainly wasn't executed. So that's gonna probably involve a couple of extra counts because of the way they reconfigured how people are coming onto the road.
Right.
But that may honestly, that may all just aid your project.
Right.
Because I think it's gonna aid the traffic flow on that road in general.
Well, the only thing is that there's 2 projects on this road. They were doing that, are going to do improvements in the next couple of months. So I'm trying to be ahead of the game. If there's anything we need to do on where they're doing the improvements, if we can push around, that will be the best for everyone and the most economical and reasonable for traffic, so.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Have a good night.
So I'd like to just go back, if we have representatives from Cupo and Maffei, we'd like to jump back to that project, can?
Just talk into
Welcome.
the microphone.
If you can introduce yourselves, please speak into the microphones.
I'm Rosanna Cupo.
Vito Maffe.
Welcome. So tell us a little bit about what you're proposing here.
We have 3 existing lots, each with a house, and we're basically rearranging the lot lines. which to what we think is a more favorable layout.
What are the benefits of the reconfiguration?
We get well, the two lots that are side by side, you get a better backyard,
Mm-hmm.
because we have very small, the way it's configured, a small backyard. And the land itself is really not usable for that house on the lake, so this gives us a little bit more opportunity, to enhance our home, say with a pool, or, something like that.
So, do I understand that it's one very long lot between the lake and almost running the hillside terrace?
Right.
What's described on the plans as West Wind Drive, is that a private road? It is a private road?
It services my house, it's on the farm,
Mm-hmm.
and then there's a couple of houses on down on the lake, and it services that. The roads continue onto their driveways.
Okay, right, and that's where it becomes gravel driveways.
Well, West Wind is gravel also.
Okay. And then your two properties are the ones alongside Round Lake Terrace, that fronted on Round Lake
Mhm.
Terrace. And so the lakefront property would become considerably smaller, and that land would then be dedicated over to your two.
Correct.
Okay. And the lakefront lot is commonly owned by each of you?
My
Okay.
brother, sister, that
Okay.
was our parents' home.
Okay, and if I mean, do you rent that out currently, do you? Okay. Consultants? Sean?
All right, so the plan identifies the zone as SR 15, which we agree with. For that zone, there's two different requirements for the general zoning components, one with central sewer and one without. So I understand, it's not labeled on the plans, but all three of them are single-family dwellings?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, that's what the tax map said as well. That should be labeled, oh, I'm sorry, it is there. A lot of times I see it inside the house, for the existing dwelling, typically it says existing single-family dwelling. So, the bulk table raises some concerns about potential variances. My understanding is that they would be existing nonconformities, and the nonconformities are not getting worse, and therefore, typically, in my experience, a variance wouldn't be required, but maybe Ashley can touch on that.
Yeah, as long as, so, we don't know whether it's legally pre-existing non-conforming or not, so if there's any, we need confirmation that they are legally pre-existing. If, say, the house was built at a time when the setbacks were smaller, so it complied with the zoning, then that would be, then that wouldn't be a problem.
Yeah, I believe so, because we were kind of surprised when, I think it's 39 feet, the front yard now. And when we built it, it was 50 at the time. And then Jim Fury mentioned that the town took the right to, I guess, change the right-of-way that they have and pushed it back along the road, I don't know,
I think like 8 feet.
Yeah,
Okay.
somehow.
Something happened along the road, and now our houses
So
became
we believe it happened after.
non-conforming.
8.5 feet, oh, maybe a taking by the town for the right
Yeah,
of
they
way.
took it after,
That was after
Okay.
we built them.
because I was kind of surprised when I saw that.
Hmm.
We didn't need a variance when we built it.
Right, and those would be the kinds of things that we'd be going back through the records to verify.
Okay. And then we're actually relieving, I guess, in the backyard, he needed a variance to build his pitch pool or something.
Yeah, I had it above.
And then we're gonna,
Okay.
that should go away now, because, we'll have more
Okay.
property back there.
The one thing I question, for the proposed lot one, the house that you guys share, is the front yard. Currently, they identify the front yard as the way the house faces, which I presume is towards Hillside Terrace, is that correct?
No, it faces the lake.
No.
Oh, it faces the lake, okay. So the way the plan calls out front yard, is towards Hillside Terrace.
Well,
the
the front
way-
door is on that side.
Well, so the way that, lot line, the front lot line definition states is, a lot line which separates a lot from a street or other means of access. To me, and maybe this is something for council, is, the means of access is off, Round Lake Terrace, so maybe that's gotta be determined.
Yeah, I haven't looked at that or the definition of the plan closely, but
I have the-
something.
What definition?
Yeah, I feel like that.
So currently the.
So this is,
I was
This
incorrect,
dwelling.
the front door is facing Hillside Terrace.
okay, so this dwelling, they're claiming that this is the front yard.
Okay.
The only, it doesn't have front, it doesn't have a lot frontage on any
Yeah.
road, other than at this point. This lot line belongs to this lot.
So that's something I'll have to look closer at.
So-
I don't wanna
Yeah.
belabor it here, but that's, yeah, make sure the front yard is correct.
Right.
What does it need to be? Is it 50 feet or?
The front yard setback is 40 feet required.
Oh,
So you get
but-
access
but the-
currently from a right of, you get access currently from that right of way over the lot in front, correct? Okay, and that's just a driveway?
yeah.
Right, but the point is all the labeling of the proposed and existing for that lot would have to be changed. That's what,
Oh,
so, just on the plan.
Yeah, you shouldn't have a problem meeting the bulk at all for that, I would think?
No, the rear could be compromised.
the rear would
It's
be the
only-
lake end, the
if-
lake?
Oh, if it
This
changes,
side
okay.
is now the rear, that could change, so.
So you're saying it's not so much an issue of, 3 of the 4 sides, if they're the front, are fine.
It's just making sure
It's
they're
how-
labeled
it's how it-
correctly, one, and.
How that affects the rear, because
Exactly.
if the side that's facing, was it Round Lake Terrace, and the way the access driveway comes in becomes the front,
Correct.
the front would be okay, but then
Right.
you've only got, what,
10 feet for the rear, right. Which
I think
currently,
initially there was a variance when my parents built that house. It might have been a side variance then,
okay,
because I think it's only like 5 feet.
10, yeah,
10,
right.
so- Yeah, the one
side is
The one side is very close.
Right, so that just has to be looked at. And so with that regard, the way the lot lines are proposed, there would be, and there isn't currently, any or any frontage on any road, so whether or not a 280A would be, waiver would be required.
I think
Or
because
never
they're
had
actually,
any front, it never had roadway access?
so because they're actually constructed already, the houses, and you're not, 280A is actually tied to when there's a building permit requirement, so
Okay.
since you won't need a building permit because there is this easement that gives you access, that wouldn't be an issue.
Okay.
But as far as the yards and whether then a variance might be needed, that's something to look into.
Yeah. All right,
So, and just to clarify, so there are no plans at this time for additional buildings, once things are, this is really just to give,
Just to
reconfigure the usable space
This-
and who owns what.
This will effectively eliminate any chance of building anything. Pretty much.
there's 3 lots existing, there's 3 lots proposed, there's no creation of a new lot, and there's 3 dwellings, so. So there's a lot of, as you said, the private road, and then that lot 1 that we were just talking about, that shares that same access driveway as the Carbone Himmelson property, so. We understand that's similar to the Birchtold, the recent subdivision, or, still considered subdivision. That there's an existing non-conforming shared access drive, but since there's no construction being proposed, perhaps that can just be left as a pre-existing non-conforming and wouldn't have to be brought to the town road, private road spec.
Is this considered lot
just, a note for your surveyor, it says proposed to be deleted on the lot line that's, going to be deleted. To me, that's just counterintuitive, propose to be, deleted, I would say existing lot line to be deleted, or existing lot line to be extinguished. Might be just my personal preference, but, as I mentioned about the requirements for the 15,000 square feet for the lot area versus the 1 acre, that hinges on central sewer or not. I don't see any existing septic systems for either of the,
We have septic, the house on the lake has,
yeah, so that should be shown on the plan. Oh, you said the house on the lake has septic?
has sewer.
Has sewer,
Sewer
okay.
line, yes.
So that should be shown where your septic is, just so that we make sure that with the lot line change, we're not encroaching, making any encroachments on the sewer setback requirements.
Yeah, we're not.
Yeah, but as long as it's shown, then we can just make sure of that. And northern distances. Oh, so another cleanup item. There's a lot of distances that are shown for the proposed lots. It says a distance with proposed lot in parentheses. I would just suggest that those reference the lot number. Yeah.
You should be taking
Just-
notes.
You can watch this on the town website.
There's a letter too, right? You have a letter, is this in a letter?
There is a letter from their engineer, but I don't know whether it's everything that.
Typically at the workshops, we don't provide any written comments.
Right, oh no, not their comment yet.
What is that diagonal line at 708.4 feet? What does that represent? Is that a lot line?
No, that's what they're claiming as the front yard setback?
I think
In
it's
the
the water
current,
line.
it's the current.
That's a dimension line?
Correct, yep. For the water service that feeds, proposed lot 1, the house you guys share, an easement would need to be created through the 2 lots to share. Through your lots.
He drew that in there, right?
I
Yeah.
think, so they have a note on the plan saying that there needs to be, it doesn't mention actual easement, so it'll need to be an easement that's recorded. There's a note that references there's gonna need to be something,
Yeah,
but,
that water line goes all the way.
exactly, so it
right
just
there.
needs to be
Right
an
there, so.
easement that'll be filed with the county as well as the town.
Yep. And then there's an existing sewer manhole shown in proposed lot 1. There's no lines shown, and I don't see an existing easement for that sewer. So if there's not one, we'd suggest that there is one that's filed.
That's the sewer line.
The county must have done, when they
The
put the lines
county
in,
did
they
that.
dug that whole,
Right,
straight across the whole.
right, so that, if there is an existing easement, it should be shown on the plans, so. And then procedurally, 239 referral due to the distance to County Route 5. And that's about all I have.
Anything, Ashley?
Yes, so you classify this as a subdivision, but actually the code has a provision for a lot line change. So I think that would be the appropriate, well, pending something that might change if a variance is needed based on, you know, the front yard. But basically a lot line change is when you're not creating any new parcels, which is what you're doing here. And you're just rearranging the lot line. So the definition says that you can't create a new lot or you can't create a lot that is, doesn't conform with the bulk. So here, you already have pre-existing, what we think are pre-existing non-conforming, so it would be okay in order to, you could still probably proceed as a lot line change, even though they're not conforming if they're legally pre-existing. So the process is different. It's shorter process as compared to a subdivision. You will need to add the topography on. I could give you the section of the code if you want, and you could give your surveyor, that way they could see what's required for a lot line change. It's A65, oh, no, I don't have it in front of me. A65-3 is just the definition. Hold on 1 second. So it's A65-5. Subsection B. That explains what you need
That's for what?
for a lot line change. Related to that, if that's the route it's going to take, I would suggest some map revisions too, to change the title, of course, to say lot line change instead of subdivision. It also, I think you could make the lines clearer as far as what are the existing lot lines and then what are gonna be the new lot lines. There, you could maybe really bold one or just distinguish those, so that it's more clear.
Yeah, to that point, if I may, in previous proposed lot line changes, what we've seen is sort of a look before and then a look after. I found in reviewing the plans, it was very difficult to distinguish both because things were so uniform for before and after, and also because some of the way things were labeled, to tell really, is this what exists now? Is this what's going to be later? To have kind of two looks, something that shows me, this is what it looks like now, this is how it's operating now, this is where all the distances are currently. This is what we're proposing, and just show me, okay, this is how it's gonna all lay out. I think that would also clear up, it'd be nice to look side by side, so.
It's almost
You're-
like 2 pages.
Yeah, your engineer mentions in his letter, there were 8 nonconformities in the existing setup. With the new proposal, not only does it benefit you, but it clears up some of these previous. We go from 8 nonconformities to 4. So if we can determine that they're all pre-existing, and you're telling us, well, we're gonna improve the situation for us, and we're gonna clear up some old issues, that's a benefit. But it'd sure be easier to see if I could look at them side by side. Does the board also feel that way?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so. Sorry, Ashley.
No,
please.
that's a great point. I actually was gonna, you had a recent one, J6 Construction, and they had on their map also in the corner, just a smaller picture, just showing the actual lots, no details, so just showing what's there now and what it's gonna be, and that, I think, was really helpful, and you could probably check out a copy of that plan just to see, how they did it, because they had made it really clear.
And what was the name of that?
J6 Construction, and then application number was 177-2019. A couple of other things. As far as the reference notes, the deeds that are listed aren't the current deeds, so they're not.
Oh, they're not?
No. And also the filed maps, if you could give the year and the date that they were filed as well in the reference note, that way they could be easily located. And Sean already mentioned that it would be subject to referral to the county. A public hearing won't be required for a lot line change, and under seeker, it would be a type 2 action. And I think that is it.
So the next step is we'll have the engineer redo some of this, and then we bring it back to the town.
Talk into the microphone, please.
So the next step would be having the engineer clear up some of this, and then we submit it?
Yes.
That's correct.
Right, I would highly recommend George's solution. It'd be great for your engineer to review this portion of the video, see some of the issues that we brought to bear, and that would not only aid him in moving forward with the plans, but also in having conversations with you all, help you understand some of the things that we are talking about here. Board members, questions? Comments?
Nothing really outside of just tidy up the plans. It's hard to read this on a moving train.
I did it. I thought that myself, but I know what's going on, so.
And if your engineer wants to reach out to Sean or myself, we could
Okay,
help him with that.
sure. What's your last name?
Arnott, A-R-N-O-T-T.
Any other questions that you have for us?
No.
Okay.
If you wanna come in and see that plan that she mentioned, I have it in the office.
Okay.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're next gonna be going back to a returning project, 81 Raywood Drive.
Sorry?
I don't think you have a signed copy.
I don't, thank you.
Do you have it? Signed copy from John?
Oh, that your company?
Yeah.
Welcome back, gentlemen. Again, if you could just introduce yourselves for the record.
Barry Toro, Civil Tech Engineering.
And again, Joel Mann, project consultant.
Thank you. Okay, if you'd like to give us an update on where we're at, please.
The last time we were before the board, it was decided on the 3-lot subdivision.
Guys, you gotta turn those heads down, because they'll pick up the speaker. Yeah, that's good. Yeah. Sorry.
It was decided to go with the 3-lot subdivision. In order to access the lots, we put an extension on the cul-de-sac. Along with that, it was asked that we provide the grading, utility connections, et cetera, to see how the lots are serviced and how they would lay out. So that's what was prepared in the latest set of plans. Very straightforward.
I will add that basically the discussion was about the end of the cul-de-sac, the leg of the road. There is a letter from the highway superintendent that he's okay with that concept, and this will work with the slope line. And I think there's supposed to be something from the building inspector also about the rear units. I don't know if,
Yeah, so he did confirm that they're not, a
Okay.
use variance wouldn't be required for the rear dwelling, because they didn't.
okay, so basically we had also provided a conceptual grading plan, and basically we want to move on with that project.
Okay, and can we just, so we are in receipt of the letter from the town highway superintendent about the spur to the,
We are, I did meet with John several weeks ago. We went over the plan. In general, he was good with the proposed layout. He suggested that extra,
The plan, I'm sorry, I want to get up to speed. Is this plan,
yeah.
and now, do we finalize what concept we're going, A, B, or C?
unfortunately, I don't remember the,
It's just one now, I don't know
Right,
what.
it's
letter.
one-
yeah, I don't know what letter it was.
Yeah, I
but yes.
think it might have been B. Or
The
E.
last date we have is January 29th.
Correct.
Yep,
Right.
Thank you.
you're welcome.
So as I was saying, I did meet with John a couple weeks back, and we went over the proposed layout of the extension of the cul-de-sac. He was, in general, was good with the layout. He just suggested that there be adequate room for snow storage for the winter time. So, and that section be paved. So.
One other thing, so with that road, because it is going to be a town road and it's improvements within the town right away, so I had mentioned that it would require some town board approval as well. So I did reach out to the town attorney, but I didn't have a copy of the highway superintendent letter until late last week, or I think it was late last week. So I didn't reach out to him, I haven't heard back from him yet, so I need to follow up with him in order to find out. We want to make sure that the town board is okay with this before you go too far down with this design layout, or if you're gonna need a 280A variance, but we do want just that confirmation from the town board first, before proceeding with this design.
So is that just a confirmation, or we will need to be on the town board agenda?
Well, that's what I'm finding out what
Okay,
is needed.
I got it.
One additional item I know was being talked about at the last meeting was whether or not the uncovered decks were allowed to be in the setbacks.
Mhm.
I did speak with Ben, and he did confirm that uncovered decks are exempt from being counting towards the setback. So they can be within the setback distances.
So do I understand, from what you were saying, Ashley, the additional spur from the cul-de-sac will have to be dedicated or an addition, and there'll be
Yeah,
an
I'm not sure
additional
what
dedication?
exactly the specific, it depends on, I'm not sure what was dedicated originally and whether this was just part of what was dedicated but not yet improved, but it will be improvements to the town road and in the town right away, so that's why I wanna make them aware and see what's needed.
It has to legally become part of Raywood Drive.
Well, it's an improvement to the existing road,
Right.
but the right-of-way itself already exists, the Raywood Drive right-of-way. That exists, is that good?
Yeah, I guess my understanding is that it's in the existing right-of-way for Raywood Drive, but it just has not yet been improved, so,
Oh.
because it'll be doing improvements within the town's right-of-way and becoming a town road.
What's the average length of that extension? I know the end of it is a curve, so.
It was about 140 feet.
Oh, it's about 75 feet. Yeah. The road is less than that. I will say that the full, from the right of way is about 75 feet, and probably the road is not, this about 15 feet away from the end of the right of way.
I'd say about 70 feet.
70
average,
feet,
yeah.
Just help us visualize what's being added. Okay, I mean, so that certainly clears up some of the big questions.
Just one question.
Yeah.
Based on the highway superintendent's letter, is that what he wants is that we shall extend it until the end, more than we have it now, till the end of the right of way?
I think that should be discussed with the highway superintendent, whether or not he agrees with the proposed length to make sure that there is adequate. There was no definite
I got it.
ending, but just that there's adequate storage for the snow.
So it really depend on what, in his mind, is the definition of adequate.
Right.
In a case
I don't
like
see-
this.
I don't see a big difference from extending it all the way to the right of way, so it's just another 10 to 15 feet.
Any other comments, Joel?
Other comments, on the sewer, lateral for the rear 2 units, I see that they're shared laterals. My understanding is that that would be a main, so perhaps those laterals be separated.
Okay.
Yeah.
This would have to get referred to the Village of Curious Joel, since it is their utilities. They would have to review, the proposed connections, and I guess we should discuss how, would these be an outside user? Would these have to be incorporated into a town water and sewer district? I'm not sure that's appropriate for only 3 lots, but.
So is it getting service from the Village of Curious Joel?
So there are 2 things. There is the sewer is from Orange County Sewer District number 1. The water is from the Village of Curious Joel. Now, I had discussions with the village, and actually I have an agreement drafted up and will probably be executed in the next couple of days to get water for these 3 lots. And the village agreed that the original agreements are working in the way that it should be like a separate district, but they agreed that since these 3 lots are just a small area, that will be okay. They should be just an outside user without the creation of a district.
Okay.
So once you have that agreement finalized and signed, if you could send
I
it.
will be submitted, yes.
So, sorry, Ashley, that would allow them to be billed directly by the Village of Curious Joel if they were an outside user?
Is that the plan? That's what it should do?
What?
I'm assuming? I don't know, yeah.
Sorry, my
that's-
question, my question was, so the way the agreement's drafted and with them being considered an outside user rather than a separate water district within the town of Monroe, that would allow them to be billed directly by the Village of Curious
Yes.
Joel for usage?
Yes.
Okay.
The only downside is that they will not be able to, if there's a dispute, they don't have the way to collect it through the tax, on property tax.
Right.
That's the downside, but.
But they're, because
okay
it's such
for
a
this
small area and,
they're already.
and
they're
3
okay.
connections, they're willing to
Correct.
take that risk, as it were. Okay, sorry.
So, it's unclear to me what is adjacent to those properties, whether or not an easement would need to be required for each of the water and sewer laterals.
We could clarify, but those are existing easements.
Oh, they are?
Yeah.
Okay, okay. In general, the grading looks pretty straightforward. However, I believe there was discussions at past meetings about proposed retaining walls around this site. Is that still being proposed, or?
No, they've been taken out.
Okay, okay. Otherwise, you know, the zoning appeared to comply with the requirements. And at this time, we don't have any more comments, so.
Ashley?
Sure. As far as secret, the EAF still needs to be revised. I think the only one that was submitted still referred to the duplex units, so that's no longer being proposed. I think last time there was a question about lot width calculation, but Sean, did you review that?
That's
good enough?
correct, isn't it?
So just some of, you know, as it continues to go through review, there's gonna need to be a tree survey and erosion sediment control plan and other things like that. All the requirements that are in this subdivision regs, unless there's things that are gonna be waived. And other than that, it will require, again, referral to Orange County Department of Planning, and then when it comes time for a public hearing, you'll have to send the notice to the Village of Kirschville and also Palm Tree.
So are we at the proper time to start lead agency and schedule public hearing?
Not without a revised EAF.
We can submit that tomorrow. So we can submit that tomorrow, so we can still be on the next week's meeting.
I don't know that the town board issue is going to be resolved before then, and unless there's clear direction.
That's for the road.
The road, yes, because that would potentially then be an involved agency, but I'll defer to the board how you want to proceed.
Would there be any other outstanding issues if those two issues were resolved? That we would then be able to move forward with the secret process?
Not that I think of anything. I mean, the other things about more details of the plans, that's gonna all,
Right.
you know, need to be.
The question is, if we can get something between tomorrow and the next meeting from the town. I understand if we don't have anything from the town at the next meeting, I understand that he can attack, but if we can make it as this condition, let's see if we can get something from the town board, clarification on that till the Tuesday's meeting.
It's really up to the board how.
Noreen, what's typically been our process when it comes to situations like this where between the short time of the two meetings, additional information could be provided? If I remember correctly, normally we're scheduling it for the next month's,
I believe that,
or am I incorrect? I guess, yeah, or am I incorrect about that?
I thought that was your process. I know we did make, for the last application that was on that project, it was submission of the involved agencies, and we did, you know, decide that to go forward because Bonnie wasn't here tonight to discuss the consultants, but it's really the board learning.
It's up to you, I mean, the submittal date is the
Monday's a
submittal
federal
date.
holiday.
Right, and Monday, town hall is closed for a federal holiday.
So it's basically one day that we can, so
You have
let's,
tomorrow.
so let's shoot it for tomorrow. If we can have the EAF in for tomorrow and get something clarification, I don't know if we will, but it's like, I don't know, it's up to the board.
Well, I think actually, you know, the other plans that need to be submitted as far as the tree survey and stormwater, erosion, sediment control, all that stuff, that really should, you know, be part of the circulation for the lead agency.
The tree survey is on the plans. You have the trees marked on the,
Which sheet?
on the grading plan.
The grading plan of that tree.
Grading plan, you can see all the trees shown. We did a tree survey.
The tree survey, that's the height of the trees indicated by you?
Diameters.
It's the diameters, okay. In inches, I guess.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
So there's specific requirements with the tree survey. Now, are all of those trees being removed? Is that, you're supposed to show, I believe, what's there, what's being removed, what's gonna stay? I'll pull up the exact,
That will be going further, we'll identify all the trees, what we can save and what is going to be removed. But the existing trees are all identified on the plan. I believe that the planning board might be interested in, maybe they will move the building here and there to save this kind of tree, so there will probably be some discussions going forward in the detailing of the plan, so.
and then as far as, stormwater, drainage structures and.
The limit is very close, right, because the lot size is very, is a little bit over an acre. The requirement for a stormwater pollution prevention plan is 1 acre. The disturbance is questionable, so I think the applicant should put on the plans what the disturbance is, just identify it so that whether or not a SWIP is required.
Yeah, I think we'd also like to see that before we move forward with determining lead agency.
I apologize, I also misspoke. The front line, the frontage, that is still off by 1/10 of a foot.
What's that?
On lot, proposed lot 3. The front and the rear yard have to be, the average has to be at least 75. It's like 74.9 change.
Well, it's the 54 and a half, because it's measured at the setback lines, no? The rear, the
Right.
front and rear setback lines. So the rear is 95.5 and the front is 54.5.
Can move this line with it pulling through the back line, just to make it as a proper line too.
If you'd like.
He's
But it's good to have this
this
clarification.
distance instead of this distance. We're trying to make sure.
Right, so moving that line would just tighten up the.
Just wondering the clarification for another, I can move it actually, but is that correct that we're going with the setback?
I'd have to look at the definition if it's at, the measurement's taken at the setback line
I
or
see.
at the,
But either way, in this situation, we're not
for a
going to
tenth
that,
of
we'll
a,
move it.
yeah.
Yeah.
right. It's not gonna affect the
No,
other lot,
no.
so.
Yeah.
So we have a few small issues to resolve. I think it's gonna take more than one business day to get that done. I would think it would take more than one business day to get that all done.
I can do a lot of stuff I want to.
Oh, that's it. See, that sounds like a challenge.
Anyway,
Sorry-
I'm just kidding.
sorry, Anthony.
No, but I respect the board, I
No.
understand.
Anthony?
I just had two thoughts, and
Please.
maybe if this was already discussed, but I was just thinking about the unusual layout and locations of the houses. Does the fire department review this? I mean, is that a necessary thing?
It could be sent to the, jurisdictional fire
Just
department.
wondering about the access to the houses, since they're not, the driveways don't go up to the houses, if that would be prudent. And then the other thing, which I was thinking, is, did we discuss easements for the water service and sewer services that go across the lots?
We did, yeah, the need for easement, you mean? Yeah.
Actually, John Sherney, the highway superintendent, he's also
Fire.
the fire.
Right.
He technically reviewed that.
But with the wrong hat on.
With the wrong, the wrong signature.
Sometimes in the middle of reviewing, he will switch to the other hat, sometimes he doesn't. But, I mean, as far as the issue about fire service, would that be something that'd be appropriate to put within the scope of seeker? Or,
It could be as part of just your subdivision review process
Okay.
as well. You could ask for input from the fire department. That's,
According to the fire code, this is allowed, so, but we can get clarification on that.
I mean, so far in my experience, when plans been reviewed by the highway superintendent, he always has an eye towards that.
Right.
So if he had a major concern, I wouldn't be surprised if he would have brought that up already. But yes, I think it's appropriate that we just check that box through the process. So we have the issue of the line, we have the issue of the roadway, which is really relying on the town board and town attorney. And then, I'm sorry, the third issue outstanding is?
The SWIP, if we're over an acre or not.
Stormwater.
Yeah, revised.
Okay. So I just honestly, I have to imagine, if nothing else, we're gonna be waiting for a response from the town on where to move with that.
Okay.
Next month.
When is the next meeting? Oh, we can check on that, I don't need to
No,
waste
that's
your
right
time
here.
on that now.
March 12th is the next board meeting. Submittal is February 27th at noon.
Okay,
He laughs at me.
we are following that usually.
Yes, you are.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, have a good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Okay, moving along, we have 4 different sets of minutes to review and hopefully approve. So the first ones that we're looking at are Tuesday, August 20th, 2019. The only member who was absent that meeting was John Allegro, so we have enough of a quorum to take a vote on these. So if I can ask everyone to take a couple of minutes to just do a last review of the minutes, and then we can go over any input. Just quickly, does anyone on the board have any other questions or anything for our consultant? Thank you very much for your help tonight.
Yep.
Thank you. Have a good
We'll see you
evening.
next week.
Enjoy the long weekend, if you get it.
Yes,
And you.
Thanks.
I will. No. Now, that's the one in Monroe, but I had a CBA meeting. I was gonna go to that.
I had a village Chesapeake.
No. Good
Good night.
night.
Good night.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Everyone ready for the August 20th minutes?
I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes as written for Tuesday, August 20th.
Okay, before I ask for a second, any commentary about this, any feedback? May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, the minutes are approved for August 20th, 2019. Our next minutes, November 14th, 2019.
I was absent, so
We
I
don't
think
have
we
a
have
quorum.
We do not have a quorum for that.
The next one.
Our next minutes, December 12th, 2019. All members were present that evening, so these are potentially approvable.
Do you need something signed that you were here?
No, I don't.
Okay.
Any comments, concerns, changes for these minutes?
No.
And if I can ask for a motion to approve?
I'll make that motion.
I can have a second?
I'll
Thank you.
second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so moved. And finally, we're looking at our meeting minutes from January 9th, 2020. The only one absent at that meeting was Bonnie, so we are okay to review these tonight as well.
Good thing you pointed your acting chair.
Comments, questions, concerns about our minutes from January 9th? Anthony, you have anything?
No, just,
A spelling error, which I'll
Okay.
fix.
what was on the list?
Then if I can get a motion to pass the minutes from January 9th.
I'll make that motion that we approve the minutes from January 9th.
Thank you, may I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so the motion passes, January 9th, 2020 minutes are approved. So that will just leave us to go back and review November 14th, 2019. If I can ask everyone to just keep that in your packets until our next meeting, and hopefully we'll be able to get those taken care of on Tuesday. Any other business anyone would like to bring before the board?
I will not be here on Tuesday. I'm going on a long-standing vacation.
Thank you. Good to know that in advance. Anyone else?
One I'm very looking forward
Yes, we better all be here.
to. I'm really looking forward to this.
Hopefully John will be well. Okay, then, with no other business, if I can ask for a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Make a motion, we adjourn tonight's meeting.
Thank you. May I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much, everyone.